Greetings everyone, including myself. It's beginning of August and I feel so happy to finally find time to start this project that I had in mind for a while now. I wanted to record myself reading this very special book that came and transformed my life. I wanted to record it for my future self as I continue to practice my inner reflections, which I feel is an exciting lifelong journey, despite how turbulent or blissful it may present itself to be. I also wanted to upload it for others as I couldn't find any audiobooks of this book, and I'm sure and hope many of you may benefit hearing these words. Just a little wee background. This book was recommended to me a long time ago now, 5 or so years ago, and had been dormant in my shelf for a few years. It was only when I entered this unimaginable crisis that I somehow picked up this book, and now looking back, I have to say I am very glad this crisis led me to hold this book. From the beginning to end, it has been magical, and I have to say this is an understatement. So here, I would like to send my deepest gratitude to the universe, who always keeps an eye on me, my growth and my journey, and all forces and souls who brought this book to existence. This book has been my greatest teacher with so much tenderness and love, and I would like to dedicate this recording to life and everyone and everything that exists in togetherness, who said yes to life, yes to growth, yes to feelings, and yes to serve others and everything that exists with us all. So, I hope you enjoy these words. Fear no evil. The Pathwork method of transforming the lower self. Compiled and edited by Donovan Tessenger from material channeled by Eva Piarakos. Authorship. The cover of this book lists the names of 2 human beings, but neither of us is truly the author. Most of the words in this volume were spoken by a discarnate being who came to be called the Guide, and Eva Piarakos was the channel through which the material was delivered. For over 25 years, Eva developed herself spiritually, thus deepening her capacity to be a channel for higher truths. However, the Guide did not ever speak out a volume called Fear No Evil, nor did he ever arrange in one stream all of his comments about the transformation of the lower self. The idea of gathering together the Guide's teachings on this subject, the work of editing and assembling these teachings, and the choice of a title were mine. Since the final choices as to which of the Guide's words to include and which to omit have been mine, any errors of omission or commission are also mine. The editorial labors and suggestions of Judith Sally, John Sally, Susan Tessenger, and Jan Bresnik were indispensable, as was the technical assistance of Karen Milnick, Iris Markham, Hedda Curler, and Rebecca Daniels. Fear No Evil was commissioned by the Pathwork Foundation. Donovan Tessenger, 7 Oak Center, Medicine, VA, October 1991. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Psalm 23. If a way to the better there be, It lies in taking a full look at the worst. Thomas Hardy. Introduction 1. You and I and evil. Human nature is capable of an infinite amount of evil. Today, as never before, it is important that human beings should not overlook the dangers of evil lurking within them. It is unfortunately all too real, which is why psychology must insist on the reality of evil and must reject any definition that regards it as insignificant or actually non-existent. Carl Jung. When evil is understood to be intrinsically a divine energy flow, momentarily distorted due to specific wrong ideas, concepts, and imperfections, then it is no longer rejected in its essence. From The Meaning of Evil and Its Transcendence. You are not an evil person. I am not an evil person. Yet evil exists in the world. Where does it come from? The evil things that are done on earth are done by human beings. We can't blame the plants and animals or an infectious disease or evil influences from outer space. But if you and I are not evil, who is? Does evil reside only in other places such as Nazi Germany or the evil empire of Stalinist Soviet Union? Or only in the hearts of criminals and drug lords, but not in the hearts of anyone we know? Or is it possible that no one is evil, but only misguided? Can we really attribute the most unbelievable horror of the Holocaust, or the sadism of an Idi Amin, or the government-sanctioned torture being practiced right now in many countries of the world to simple misguidedness? The word seems thin and insufficient as an explanation. So where does evil reside? From whence does it arise? The Pathwork teaches that evil resides in each and every human soul. Or to put it another way, evil in the world is nothing more than the sum total of the evil that exists in all human beings. Evil is a very strong word. Most people want to reserve it for the Hitlers and the criminals of the world, and do not want to apply it to themselves. Does it apply to you and to me? The first definition of evil given by my dictionary is morally reprehensible, sinful, wicked. This definition makes it clear that it is an inappropriate use of the word to speak of the evils of disease and death. Disease and death are painful aspects of human existence, but they are not certainly morally reprehensible. On the other hand, it is a correct use of the word to speak of the evil institution of slavery. I have done things that are morally reprehensible, and I strongly suspect that so have you. We all have character flaws. We are all more or less egocentric, selfish, and petty. And these character flaws have led me many times to be unloving, spiteful, jealous, and to act in ways that only add to the sum total of distress in the world. But does this make me evil? You and I are certainly not evil in our totality or in our essence, but we do have evil within us. Hence, the word evil can describe a continuum of behavior that goes all the way from simple pettiness and egocentricity on one end to the genocidal sadism of narcissism on the other. Those of us who predominantly inhabit the low end of the spectrum may wish to say we have nothing in common with the murderers at the high end. Yet can it be true that we have nothing in common with them? To use the second of those dictionary synonyms, are we not all sinners? 30 or 40 years ago, the word sin was still in common use, but, open bracket, save among the fundamentalists, close bracket, it is scarcely ever used anymore. Now we are more likely to use the terminology of psychology, which talks instead about our human faults and failings, but usually in ways that put the blame elsewhere, on parents or society for making us the way we are. Personal change then happens when we understand the source of the negative programming others have done to us, feel all the feelings involved, open bracket, primarily anger and grief, close bracket, and then forgive the outer source of the negativity we still suffer from. And this is a crucial part of the transformation process. However, in the psychological view, we have lost something that the all-religious idea of sin gave to us. Namely, that we are responsible for our own negativity, our personal acts of omission and commission. Being responsible is quite different from being guilty. It means simply acknowledging ourselves as sometimes the source of pain, injustice, and uncaring towards ourselves, others, and the world. If I can assent to this degree of self-responsibility, that I am not merely a victim of the evil in the world, but in my own small way an initiator of negativity, what then should I do about it? How can I go about transforming the evil in myself? Traditional religion gives us moral precepts to live by, such as, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and love thy neighbor as thyself. Surely we can all agree that if everyone abided by these golden rules, the world will be a much more pleasant place in which to live. But we do not very often abide by them. I do not, and you do not. If we accept the principle as valid, why is it so hard to live up to? How do I go about changing my behavior? What do I need to do to become more loving? The answer of traditional religion too often seems to be merely, try harder. In traditional religion, in the words of Carl Jung, every effort is made to teach idealistic beliefs or conduct which people know in their hearts they can never live up to, and such ideals are preached by officials who know that they themselves have never lived up to these high standards and never will. What is more, nobody ever questions the value of this kind of teachings. The answers of traditional religion have been so disappointing that many people who would formerly have consulted a priest now go instead to see a psychotherapist. How successful has modern psychology been in grappling with the problem of evil? A recent article about Abraham Maslow, the father of humanistic psychology, states, in his last years, Maslow was grappling with the nature of human evil. He expressed misgiving over the inability of humanistic and transpersonal psychology to assimilate our dark side, open bracket, what Jung termed the shadow, close bracket, into a comprehensive theory of human nature. Maslow himself found this a troubling issue and had come to no final conclusion about it by the time of his death. Those of us who have studied and practiced the Pathwork have discovered, with a sense of relief, that these teachings provide the crucial missing link that has heretofore eluded both religion and psychology. The vast majority of present-day spiritual transmissions or channeled material focuses on the essential goodness of human beings, on our ultimate God self nature. And this is a valuable message for our time. But what are we to make of our dark side? Where does it come from? Why is it so intractable? How are we to deal with it? It is in providing answers to these questions that the message of the Pathwork has its unique value. The transmission that came through Eva Piarakos teaches us that evil can be found in some form in the heart of every human being, and that it need not be feared and denied. A method is given by which we can see our dark side clearly, understand its roots and causes, and most important, transform it. The result will be peace in the human heart, and only after this is achieved will there be peace on earth. 2. Eva the Guide, the Pathwork. The material that is gathered here was originally spoken, not written. Eva Piarakos is not the author of this material, only the channel through which it was delivered. The true author is a discarnate being who spoke through Eva when she entered a state of altered consciousness. This being tells us nothing about itself, no personality traits, no history, no glamour. It does not even give itself a name, but it came to be known as the guide. The material that was transmitted came to be known as the guide lectures, and the process for personal transformation given in the teachings is known as the Pathwork. The guide placed all emphasis on the material delivered, and none on the source. He said in one of his later transmissions, "Do not be concerned with the phenomenon of this communication as such. The only thing important to understand at the beginning of such a venture is that there are levels of reality which you have not yet explored and experienced, and about which you can only theorize at best. Theory is not same as experience, and letting it go at that for the moment will be so much better than trying to force a definitive conclusion." Do you remember that this voice does not express the conscious mind of the human instrument through whom I speak? Furthermore, take into consideration that every human personality has a depth of which he or she may as yet be unaware. At this depth, everybody possesses the means to transcend the narrow confines of his or her own personality and receive access to other realms and to entities endowed with a wider and deeper knowing. From 1957 to 1979, the guide delivered through Eva 258 lectures on the nature of psychological and spiritual reality and on the process of personal spiritual development. A sampler of 17 of these lectures has been published in an earlier volume entitled The Pathwork of Self-Transformation. This present volume will focus on the method of self-transformation that the guide presented. It is not a simple method, but it promises, if followed faithfully and courageously, enormously far-reaching results. This path demands from an individual that which most people are least willing to give: truthfulness with the self, exposure of what exists now, elimination of masks and pretenses, and the experience of one's naked vulnerability. It is a tall order, and yet it is the only way that leads to genuine peace and wholeness. During the first 10 years of the guide's transmissions, a group of people gathered around Eva, learning the principles that the guide explained and attempting to put them into practice. In 1967, Eva met Dr. John Piarakos, a psychiatrist and co-creator of a school of therapy known as bioenergetics. A few years later, they were married, and the merger of his work and hers led to a great expansion of the Pathwork community. The network of people practicing and teaching the Pathwork now includes 2 schools that teach the Pathwork in Phoenicia, New York, and Madison, Virginia, and study groups in many urban areas in the United States and in Europe. During Eva's lifetime, she died in 1979. The Pathwork community would gather every month at a location in New York City. Eva would then enter a state that she described as a light trance, and the guide would speak through her for about 45 minutes. The lectures were recorded, transcribed, and then distributed to the members of the community. The verbal presentation of the material led to a certain amount of repetition within each lecture. Also, over the course of the 22 years of their transmission, many themes were repeated and elaborated upon. In preparing this volume, some of the guide's repetitions have been edited out, but in keeping with our desire to retain the flavor of the original, some of it remains. At the end of each lecture, there was a question and answer period. We have removed most of this material from the present text, but have chosen to leave in several examples of this interchange between the members and the guide. 3. How to use this book. We strongly recommend that you do not try to sit down and read this volume straight through. The material was originally presented with the expectation that each lecture would be read and then discussed for full months before the next lecture was given. Much of the material is rather dense and requires rereading and thoughtful attempts to apply it to yourself. If you have others that you can share this book with, reading it together and discussing it as you go along, that would be ideal. If not, we recommend that you read the lecture once, wait a few days, and then read it again, and then take some time to do your best to apply the principles to yourself and to your own life before going on to read the next lecture. The selection of lectures and parts of lectures that appears here is a sampling from the 258 that were delivered. They are presented chronologically and are best read in that order. However, if you find any one section of the book hard-going, we recommend that rather than put the book aside, you jump ahead to another lecture with a title that interests you. These lectures elaborate a method of observing yourself and a theoretical structure which you can use to organize and understand what you observe. The work then requires diligent efforts to remove your masks and defenses and feel and acknowledge the true feelings that you have repressed and denied. Some of this work can be done alone, but for most people who have reached this stage of the path, it becomes very difficult to continue the work in solitude. You will need friends and helpers, fellow travelers, to help you see some aspects of yourself that you prefer to keep in the shadow. Once you have learned true self-observation and then have had the courage to bring your shadow, your lower self, into the light, you'll be ready and able to begin to practice genuine self-transformation. The work is not quick and not easy, but it will truly change your life. Donovan Tessinger.